Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. The topic for today's session is Chasing Zero Waste Emission Inefficiencies. Before we begin the session, we would like to take you through the functionality of this webinar. Your participation is important all through the session. If you have any questions for our speakers, please enter the same in the Q&A widget on your screen. Your queries will be answered towards the end of the session. We have everyone on mute throughout the session to avoid any audio disturbances that may distract other users from listening to the webinar. Without further ado, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce our speakers for the day. We have with us Mr. Yogesh Nagpal, Global Head, EHS, Yash Technologies, Christian Polivka, Director, EHS Solutions Management, SAP, Anchal Sood, Director, Global Center of Excellence, SAP India, Amar Jadhav, Senior Solution Architect, SAP India Private Limited. Request our first speaker, Amar Jadhav, to commence the session. Over to you, Amar.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Hope I'm audible, just to check quickly.
Yes, you are audible, Amar.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, as Shahid mentioned, today's session is about sustainability, and the focus area for this session is around the climate action, especially the greenhouse gas emissions that we are talking about here. This is the overall agenda. We'll have my fellow colleagues, talk about some of the sessions. I'll start with setting up the context, putting sustainability into the business context. What are some of the risks associated with, the phenomena that we see all across us, which is about the climate change, and what are the opportunity that exists for corporates to embrace or to capitalize on. And then I'll hand over to my colleague Christian. He will talk about some of the SAP solution that we are talking about here in terms of helping our customers to meet their sustainability related challenges and opportunities. And then we'll have Yogesh talk about environment management solution from SAP and how environment management solution can help organizations to report their carbon footprints, the corporate carbon footprints, and embed them into business process. And finally, we'll open up for questions. That's the agenda. Without further ado, let me start with the context. While sustainability is the broader term, it covers environmental, social, and the governance aspects. But for today's sessions, we are focusing primarily on the climate change part of the overall sustainability requirement. And if you look at climate change is a real, there are enough of studies and empirical evidences that this is a real phenomena, and corporates have accepted the fact that industrial activities and operations have resulted into part of that we see today all across us. As per the TCFD, which is a task force on climate related financial disclosures, there are two types of risks that organizations have today or have to deal with. One is a transition risk, which is all about transitioning to a low carbon business model. Or net zero carbon kind of a business operations, and the second one is a physical risk. When you look at transition risk, there are further risk categories like policy and the legal. More and more governments are actually imposing, carbon tax, for an example, or certain compliance requirements, which is actually will add to corporates' compliance cost. Some of the assets that they would have invested would actually be underutilized because it may add to the overall carbon footprints, and there are stringent restriction on using those assets. Even there would be write-offs from an asset standpoint. From a technology standpoint, as customers are now looking at more and more sustainable products, there would be less access to the capital, or even corporates have to provision new capital to then, let's say, change the technology and then go for a more sustainable products and services, and that adds to the overall financial stress that organizations will have. Market where customer behaviors are changing, they are looking for more and more sustainable products. That means the existing products and services demand will go down significantly, and there will be impact on the revenue. Similarly, on the revenue side, as more and more stakeholders demands organizations to disclose their overall sustainability performance, be it investors, governments, or customers, there would be definitely a stress on organizations to kind of I would say navigate and even have strategies in place to kind of be more sustainable in the long term. On the physical risk side, we have seen extreme weather events recently in India as well, flood and cyclone and so on and so forth. All of this is also kind of I would say a risk which are actually related to some of the operations will get disrupted. For example, supply chain will get disrupted, or even the assets that you would have commissioned may have a damage, and you will not be able to utilize those assets for your operations, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the risks that we see, and organizations are actually looking at ways to kind of measure and monitor the impact of their operations when it comes to environmental impact, social impact, or governance impact. But it's not only a risk, there are also opportunity exist for organizations to kind of capitalize on this particular trend, and also the demands from various stakeholders. At the end of the day, there are opportunity to reduce environmental footprints, and thus the production and the services cost by optimizing the energy consumption, even innovating with business models, finding new revenue streams by offering new products and services which are more sustainable and will have a demand in future, or maybe already there is a demand currently in the market, as well as make supply chain more resilient by having an alternate supply in place, and have those sources already identified, and possibly maybe more and more local sources are identified rather than relying on the overseas sources, for an example. So these are some of the opportunities for an organization, and these can be availed, or these can be capitalized on by embedding these sustainability related metrics into the business processes. Here are some examples of how sustainability related measures can be embedded into the business processes. When you look at supply chain, it's all about which product you design, which product you manufacture, from where you source this raw material for this particular product, from where you manufacture this product, and how do you transport this product to your dealers or retailers. And all of these processes, can be looked at how much carbon footprint or environmental footprints are resulting into these activities, and they then take an informed call that, okay, we need to maybe change certain processes to reduce the environmental footprint. So that's where these embedded insights from an environmental standpoint would be used in the operation. Similarly, sourcing, where nowadays circular economy is another big topic. So, already in India, there's a regulation around extended producer responsibility, where, the manufacturers have to bring back the plastics and the electronic component into their operations by sourcing it from the recyclers. The third one is in investment management, where how can you make an informed decision, not only look at the financial metrics, but also an environmental metrics. For example, what is the potential of a carbon footprint reduction? And there are these techniques like carbon abatement cost curve being used by organizations to kind of evaluate the potential of an investment from an environmental standpoint. Similarly, on the marketing side, there would definitely be hit on the margin, but how can you actually assess the willingness to pay of an end customers who are ready to shell out more for green products or sustainable products, and thus also then ensure the margin is being protected. And finally, on HR side, where the carbon tax can be imposed on international travels, for example, or travel by certain means, which can then be used in funding the energy efficiency projects or carbon reduction projects in the organization. So these are some of the opportunities and areas where sustainability related insights can be brought into the business context, into the business processes for an informed decision making. So I'll just stop here and would hand over to Christian for the next part of the session. Christian, over to you.
Thank you, Amar. Great examples, and I think that makes it really tangible. Before I continue, let's give the audience a second to answer the poll.
How do you monitor or capture your environment data parameters? Please use the options below to answer the question, and let us give it a minute, listen, and after a minute you can continue.
Sure. Good, then I would continue. So
yes, please.
After getting the tangible scenarios from Amar, which really showed us again how sustainability evolved over the last, it's even not months. I mean, I'm in this area since more than a decade, and the change I saw in the last 18 months is really tremendously. Amar mentioned the push from the investors, the entire ESG reporting movement. This is so tremendously impacting all of us. So therefore, obviously, to respond to all of that, SAP, it's not just that we have the applications to do so. It's rather that we really see it's in our responsibility to do so. I mean, 77% of the world's revenue streams go through any kind of SAP system. So if you think of investment decisions, bringing together financial, non-financial reporting, so obviously that must come from SAP. So we really see that as our responsibility. And this is also reflected in our sustainability portfolio. So this is really high level on what you see here on this slide, just to get us all on the same page, how SAP is looking at ESG and sustainability. So we have structured our solutions and our investment in 4 areas. We have the climate action area, which is of focus for today's session. Beside that, there is, Besides the climate action, there is the area of circular economy, what you see here in the middle layer. This is all about embedding the idea of circularity into not just the company's thinking, starting from R&D towards manufacturing and then delivery and use of the product. It's really about extending the use and looking at the entire life cycle of a product or a service. So there's a huge potential, obviously, and SAP is heavily investing in that area. And on the right side, you see the social responsibility, really protecting people and communities. And we have here a mature set of applications to foster safety at the workplace, but also on a community level, ensure that people are protected. And to bring everything together, there we have these holistic steering and reporting pillar on top of that. And I already mentioned integrated reporting. So there is a big demand for transparency currently on all of these dimensions. And this transparency is required from stakeholders, stockholders. The financial pressure here is enormous. And there are so many different frameworks which are thrown at companies. It's really hard to decide which ESG framework they should follow and pick and choose which KPIs are necessary to be reported. Ranking agents are then, this is a bit annoying, but I think that's part of the story here. So with these ranking agents, they really increase the pressure, and companies need to be transparent on all of that. And as said, it grows together with the financials reporting. So, and in the end, we need to make the sustainability dimensions, we measure them, and we also need to measure the impact. And this is where we see a trend towards valuation and giving a monetized value to the ESG dimensions. So this just as a high overview, how we look at sustainability and how we structure our products. And I brought this slide with me just to give you a bit more of details. Behind each of these pillars, speaking of these four, there is basically one or a set of applications. For certain areas, we really need to have more than just one application. And this is the nature of sustainability, that it's a cross topic and it needs to be tackled on several fronts. Ideally, we need to embed these dimensions into our line of business applications and processes. And let me move to the next one, because there I can basically give you a good example of what I mean with embedding the sustainability dimensions into the ongoing processes. When we talk about climate actions, we do see here two leading applications: the SAP footprint management and the EHS environment management application. And the later, the EHS application, that will be subject of the detailed discussion and presentation from my colleague coming after me. But just as a quick example, when I say how to leverage this sustainability information, and it's basically not just that the sustainability experts live on their island, do their job, do a bit of reporting. These days, they need to be part of the core crucial processes and come more and more close to financial and decision-making in all different areas. So what we do currently is we have this product footprint management application where footprints are calculated. And it's a bit like an LCA tool, but it's much more powerful as we take that information and then push it back into different applications. So for example, in the purchasing process, if a purchaser wants to select a product or a good from a vendor, then he will see, beside the commercials or the timing, he will see the footprint associated to this specific vendor and product he is about to decide for. And therefore, he can then make an educated decision based on the climate, speaking of the carbon dimension. And we do similars at all fronts. So we push this product footprint into transportation management to leverage it there, into business planning to make decisions there based on the carbon footprint. So all really then is contributing and getting the benefit out of these specific sustainability applications, but it's getting part of the bigger picture. And also when it comes to environment management, of course, if we look at the corporate footprint, that needs to be taken into account when we look at the product footprint. So it's basically these two things what we see here. One looking at the product footprint, but of course, when we determine the product footprint, then we also need to include what are scope 1 and 2 emissions of our plant. So that was just a bit of an intro on how SAP is structuring the portfolio and a bit about our philosophy, how we are investing currently heavily into all of these applications to basically bring our ERP towards a sustainable, intelligent enterprise to help our customers on this sustainability journey. And with that, I would hand over to Yogesh to give you further insights on EHS environment management.
Thank you, Christian. We do have another poll coming up here. I would request maybe participant, all the attendees to, again, help us with the poll question. We can pause here for 30 seconds and then I'll pick it up and we'll get into the environment management.
What are your key challenges related to environmental or sustainability reporting? Please use the below options to provide your answer and click on submit to submit your poll.
Okay, I hope everybody got a chance to answer the question here. So now we are getting into the subject of environment management. As my fellow panelists, Christian and Amar, laid down the stage for the bigger sustainability strategy, and we moved from sustainability strategy towards more of climate action. Within the climate action, SAP provides this functionality or this solution called environment management, which pretty much helps us through the entire life cycle of the data collection across emissions, discharges, about pollutants, and then reporting it to the authorities after right validation. We will look through this process flows, the solution, and a quick solution demonstration as well in the next 20 minutes. As the module name suggests, environment management solution is a part of the holistic solution portfolio from EHS management from SAP. You see, while there are other solutions around incident management, health and safety, management of change, and maintenance safety, which gives you the entire spectrum or 360-degree actionables into your EHS operations on a day-to-day basis. We are going to focus on the middle layer, which is environment management, which will help the module which helps us in managing ourselves within the permit and compliances, which we have been defined as we start our operations, and reporting it to the authorities on timely basis. So environment management module has some functional components. We define the architecture of this module through the compliance requirements and compliance scenarios. These compliance requirements can be external compliance requirements or can be internal as well. Some of these compliance requirements may be reporting to the State Pollution Control Board or Central Pollution Control Board about my emission requirements. The another compliance requirement can be submitting the reports and the data to the waste management authorities or the EPA authorities across my state about the waste discharges we are doing. So compliance requirements are at a higher level where we do define those specific requirements which we need to meet, and also we define the various limits and various permits which are allowed to be complied within those compliance requirements. Now, within my PCB requirement, I may have multiple scenarios, which means I may have to report for SOx emissions, NOx emissions, particulate matter, carbon monoxide, etc. All this becomes my separate compliance scenarios within those compliance requirements. So system gives me a flexibility to create my internal requirements. Sometimes I would like to manage certain requirements like electricity consumption, or we call it as the energy consumption in-house. So that become my compliance requirement. And within my energy consumption, I can always track my electricity, fuel, natural gas, diesel as different compliance scenarios. While to define those compliance scenarios, the system also provides me the functionality of managing different calculations and equations. By leveraging those built-in formulas and equations, I can get direct values for corresponding carbon ratings and carbon figures, which is required to be submitted for my ESG and CDP reporting. We will see that in the slides to come. So since the data is being collected from multiple sources, there's a huge amount of data, which many of this data may be coming on a daily basis. In many of our scenarios, the data may come on an hourly basis as well. So there's a huge amount of data which is coming. We can have multiple ways or multiple platforms to capture that data, and this data can always be validated before it actually gets and hits the reporting platform. With this automation and digitization trends, the pollution control boards and various regulatory authorities are asking this data to be directly loaded from the portal, and hence this data monitoring and data validation tab is crucial, where the data which is coming up from either my DSP or my stack emissions and the data which is being loaded manually is completely aligned to the various limits in which we are aligned. So that data monitoring tile helps us create those deviation and keep ourselves within those compliance requirements. Another view of process flow, how this process flow works, little more simpler into block diagrams. The first piece is definitely our environmental, the data collection. The data collection, which can be done on a monthly basis, like the data, the bills which we receive for our electricity consumption, the waste being discharged, again, the various types of the fuel bills which we receive, the data can be entered manually by different stakeholders, facility engineers, facility manager, operations team. They can be given that access to load their data. The data can come into the system through our integrated electronic systems. Again, if you're using Concur for your travel management, so how much travel you are doing for your operations, that corresponding carbon figure can be added or can be directly received into the system through those interfaces. We all know that when we book a ticket now, any flight ticket always gives us that carbon rating. That all can be captured through in Concur. Is automatically coming with the ticket, we get that carbon value, and that can be automatically put into the system through that interface. And finally, the system can very well read the data with your stack emissions, the devices which are installed into your factory and operations to read the data at a real-time basis. So once this data is achieved from multiple sources, the next step is to aggregate this data and probably calculate the GHG emission. And that's where we have, again, a couple of options and roles as the environmental data coordinator, environmental manager, and EHS head. Those different people or different roles validate the data and push it ahead. This validation can be preset automatically if the data falls within limit. But if there is an exceptional peak or exceptional, downtrend on a data on a particular piece or particular scenario, that can also be leveraged and that can be changed with the right kind of feedback and with right authorization. At the end, all this data need to be calculated. Now, consider a scenario from a global organization who is running into multiple countries. Some countries use gallons, another country use liter. Then leveraging this data, calculating this data, multiplying it with the relevant multiplication factors, generating the corresponding carbon value. Sometimes this entire process can be quite cumbersome. So that's where the pre-built calculation and equation in the system helps you do that calculation automatically as soon as we receive the data. And it converts the gallon into liter and liter into that equivalent carbon values as required by the regulations, as you have defined into your compliance scenario and compliance requirement. what we defined earlier. Finally, this all data is harmonized across the enterprise because many of these reports are not plant specific. Although we started collecting the data from a site, this all is aggregated at a plant level, and again, from a plant level to an organization level, and then it can be leveraged for multiple reporting. Internal reporting for showcasing the energy conservation, energy consumption trends, generating the predictive reports. If my trend for the first 6 months is leading me towards 10% excess, then going with the same trend, whether I will be going beyond that limit, I can know sitting in the month of July, and hence I can take appropriate action and plan to be within the limit or ask for additional permit requirements. So being proactive into those with the right data insight is one of the key reasons where more and more organizations are looking for such integrated and holistic solution. The same data can be leveraged for various types of reporting: carbon footprint reporting, TCP reporting, ESG reporting. Multiple reporting formats are supported. Even we can link it with the directly link it or interface it with the third-party tools or the portals, government portals, which are asking this data being fed live from your system. That option is also available as needed. So pretty much a holistic process from the data collection, a thorough validation on the data before it moves to the calculation, and then probably generating various reports out of the system. Now, I'm sure that you will be thinking, what all data? We talked about emissions a lot, but this solution is flexible enough and scalable enough to beyond just emission. As you see on the slide, we have put together almost 25 parameters spread across in multiple buckets. We can have parameters on emissions, different types of emissions, which is why this solution is named Emission Management, Environment Management, but it goes beyond. We also can capture the energy values on natural gas, fuel, diesel on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Water consumption and water discharges, again, groundwater, municipal water discharges. This is again a parameter which many of you have put together into your sustainability goals to reduce the groundwater, leverage the water, again, minimize the water discharges. And then the same solution can also be leveraged to track your hazardous waste, the waste which are being generated. In fact, that's a use case which is picking up a lot of heat around the market, where people really wanted to track the hazardous waste going to landfill. So we can create an internal or external compliance requirement, create those different line items or different parameters and scenarios. So hazardous waste to landfill, waste to energy, waste cost being spent onto this waste, and again, non-hazardous waste. So those all parameters can be captured on a monthly or a quarterly basis. As we receive it, we can continue to track and generate different trends. I already talked about some of the key benefits. When we look at a system of this sort, the key benefits which we get from the system is that we are trying to build a standardized process across all business sites. So this process may look simpler from the again overall perspective, because calculation, again collection, calculation, reporting. But believe me, with those 20 plants which I have and 20 different parameters, which is 400 parameters if I'm capturing on a daily basis, you see the amount of data which you get at a monthly basis, which need to be cleaned up, which need to be put together into the right format and into some standardized calculation to generate those reports. So a standardized process across all business sites, and as the companies kind of say add up more sites, more locations where they wanted to capture, the process becomes pretty much smooth as rolling out the same process to another instance. Measuring the GHG emissions, we already talked about how this calculation helps us with the GHG emission values. The system can help us with the alert and notification, an important feature that, again, if I am supposed to give a detail or capture the data by 10th of a month, I do get a notification on 1st of the month. I do get a reminder on 7th that this data is due on me. And then if we configure the system in a way, it can always loop in the supervisor and other stakeholders in case I'm not available by a particular date, so that we don't miss the data. Missing the data itself can be a non-compliance issue. So system this notification and alerts always helps us be within those compliance requirements and meeting those compliance on a timely basis. Now, many cases the data may exceed a particular, the so-called defined values. In those scenarios, how the system should react. If my tolerance limit is 10%, which means if my data should be 200, up to 220 value, the system will pass through the data and it can be directly used for my reporting purposes. But if this data goes beyond 220, which is 225 on a particular day, then this data gets kind of stuck for the approval for the right people. So we see how we are making this system more intelligent and less manual intervention involved here for data capturing, data validation process. Those all things are, again, the art of possibility within this integrated system. Again, a lot of regulatory requirements, GHG emissions, EPA requirements, CDP reporting are already pre-built. A lot many reports can be generated from the system as a part of the package which we get from SAP. These are all pre-built reports, pre-built workflows, and a lot of this calculation based upon the GHG protocols are already available in place. So I think what we have to do into this system is just feed the data, and which also can be done through the mass upload or through, again, the interfaces. So, and then the system takes care of many of its requirements on its own. The system connects very well with other components as well, like incident management. If you wanted to create an incident or a deviation, if you wanted to trigger a root cause or corrective action, it again can get into that direction as well to get you, again, create a corrective action or a root cause requirement for a corresponding or for a specific individual who will then complete it and complete that workflow and chain of action. Next, the idea is to get into a little small system demonstration. This system demonstration has been put together to cover how this data gets loaded, data gets validated, and how this entire process goes. This is a quick 5 minutes demonstration, which is self-explanatory, although I will still continue to do a small voiceover over it as it flows. Okay. So you may see a little lag on the screen, but this is how a standard SAP screens looks like with different tiles. Based upon your authorization and your role, the tiles will be available to yourself. So a data collector will see quite a few number of tiles than an EHS coordinator and a manager who has access to larger set of tiles. What you see on the screen is that we have selected for a particular plant. This is all the compliance scenarios which have been defined. So I have to capture the data for carbon dioxide, nitrogen oxide on a daily basis. And these are all the open/pending values, which probably where I'm expecting this data to be completed by the stakeholders or by the relevant champion. Now with that thing, now we have went into the system, we uploaded a value, and we see that value gets updated. Now we are also showcasing that how this data can be loaded through a template. You see that there are, again, certain number of values which probably are showing as open and pending. We are leveraging the data template, again, a template which is provided by SAP and the partner team as part of the standard package. All this data which is loaded into it, again, which is available into this Excel, can be loaded into the system, and it can automatically fill a lot many values. Now, this kind of template can also be drawn from your DSCs and from your PLC devices, where probably can feed the data in, and we can trigger, again, upload this data. So this kind of template which you see is all flexible to read the data for multiple parameters on the go. So while we filled the data manually, this process showed us how we basically fill the data through the bulk upload process or the automatic interface. The next thing is monitoring the data. In monitoring process, as we mentioned, that again, either we may approve the data, or the data may get automatically approved because it falls within those limits. You see that we have it automatically shows up as a chart for an EHS manager or a coordinator, again based upon the authorization, where he can select a particular value and approve it. Again, in this scenario, we have put together this scenario to be approved by the manager explicitly. But if it is falling within the limit, this can be set for auto approval as well. If you would like to reject the value that you don't feel comfortable with this value, you can change it or you can reject it as well, again with the right comments and right feedback. Not everybody would have that access, but with the right access, you can do that. Now, the next thing which we wanted to see into the system are the calculation. I mentioned that there are a lot of calculation which are built into the system to make all our lives easy on an ongoing basis. So you see that there are different calculations for my, again, carbon dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, ppm. So all those carbon values are there. What we will see into this scenario is that if I have 700 terms of, again, say natural gas being used, how that value corresponds to different carbon factors or different corresponding carbon factors, which has to be reported to different agencies. So you see that the only piece which has to be done into the system on a transactional level is to feed that value 700 or value that on which comes on a daily, weekly, or a monthly basis. But on the system behind the scenes automatically captures that value, pushes it into those reports and exceedances where you can create different reports and dashboards. We will also see a dashboard in the next minute and a half. This process defines that exceedance. When we see these limits being defined based upon the permits we have in place, if I see those values being exceeded, then the limit values, the system gives us an option to create those exceedances and deviations. And these deviations gets created into the system as an action or a task for a stakeholder who is responsible for collecting the data. Then it can be sent to the facility manager considering the severity of the issue, and multiple threads or multiple workflows drive this action toward completion. So you see a linkage between the data being collected, this environment management module, and our action tracking or CAPA management system. In this environmental module and the deviation reporting or incident tracking where the incidents are being reported. If you see a faulty meter or faulty device which is giving us a wrong alarm or a wrong data, from here itself I can trigger a maintenance notification or I can trigger a replacement action for those devices. What you see on the dashboard on the screen is a holistic dashboard that gives us a picture on a monthly basis based upon the different sites, different location, and definitely cover the holistic picture gives me one view of my entire environmental management operation. I know this was a little quick demo, but the idea was to give you all of you a quick glimpse how the system looks like, again, from what we have been talking in the last around half an hour or so. Another dashboard that gives you a visibility on the emission by location. Again, as I said, that the art of possibility is endless. When you have the right data in the right place, you can leverage this data to generate any kind of smart analytics or, again, decision making. On the slide, you see a case study. In this customer, again, a large medical device manufacturing company. We have helped them put together the entire framework environmental management solution. And the end result was that, one, they could standardize their procedures across 40 sites. 40 sites being, again, spread across 12 countries, 27,000 people is definitely a sizable operation for that organization, which is around $12 billion in size. So we standardized the operation around 40 plants. And the power of standardization, I will say that when they bought a new site in Israel, they could roll out this system within 3 weeks. So within 3 weeks of time, the same system was available to a newly acquired site because the run book or the processes were very well defined into the implementation cycle. Again, like any other company, the challenges were a lot of data was in place, a lot of reports were being asked. For almost like many years, the CDP scores, CDP reporting took CDP's Carbon Disclosure Project, which is a voluntary reporting which asks companies to submit their GHG emission and corresponding carbon score to them from Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. So again, they were being challenged on this CDP score because it took a lot of time for data collection. Many a times it was back and forth between the data stakeholder, between different sites, again, for getting the correct data on a timely data, I should say, and finally putting it into that format which can be put together for the reporting. By leveraging the system, we not only harmonize the process of collecting and capturing those data, we also could create multiple programs. The company used this same application and structure to go beyond just emission and environment parameters, and they jumped into the waste minimization project. The company defined themselves a goal of 20% waste minimization in 3 years, which means if I have to walk on that journey, I would like to look at the waste being generated in the last 3 years, how I am trending in this year, and whether I'll be able to meet my goal by extrapolating the trends which I'm getting for my hazardous waste to landfill from the last 36 months in the last 6 months. So that way we are able to extrapolate it and define ourselves more achievable and measurable goals with respect to waste minimization. We also moved towards more renewable energy, but because now we had a deeper visibility on the energy consumption. If you see the report or the dashboard on the screen now, this is a dashboard which the global environmental manager wanted to see the consumption of energy parameters or energy portfolio across 6 different streams. So you see at one point of time, while the non-renewable energy was on the increasing trend, we from a particular point of time, this renewable energy started kind of increasing. So we kind of pushed the renewable energy up because now we had a deeper visibility that my European sites are better off in leveraging natural energy, natural gases, solar energy, or hydropower. While if I talk about my, again, another set of sites who are consuming a lot of diesel and the bioorganic fuel. So from that perspective, the right visibility gave us the power in hand to make some right decisions and hence change the trends towards the actionable task and actionable movements. Now, extending this report, as I said, that once you have the right data in the right place with the structures in place, it actually helps us create multiple reports and dashboard. We put together the entire site view for a particular month, for a particular division. So in this chart, you see the hazardous waste, electricity consumption, water consumption, based upon the cost of goods being sold and the energy cost being spent, which we are able to select for a particular division, business unit, and at a site level. Again, we can do it on a monthly basis and a yearly basis based upon the drop downs which can be provided on top of it. The entire, again, a possibility of this dashboard can be made only because of having that data into the environment management module. That they are leveraging this system extensively. These kind of reports gets published every month, go to the plant manager, and again, real-time integrated. As soon as I get a value for a particular month, the system automatically updates this dashboard and hence move it again into those dashboard and for my visibility. So this is a nutshell about the program. I know this was quick, but within the time given, the idea was to give you all a good glimpse on how the system runs, how the data gets captured, the calculations, which are very mature calculation, again, being leveraged for more than 10 years now. The system is being in place, being evolving with the time, available on the latest theory and with mobility application for reporting and workflows, gives us all the benefits which a customer may ask from the perspective of automation, digitalization, and performance. This last slides talk about our experience. I would not take much time, rather leave some questions, leave some time for a Q&A. But Yash is a proud partner with SAP for EHS, working into this domain for past 17 years, delivering value to our, again, prestigious clients across the globe. This organization is, our Yash organization is 25 years old, and we have been engaged with more than 500 customers across the globe. Our EHS engagement speaks for ourselves. EHS is a niche service area for us, where we have the domain experts from multiple industries. We talk business first, and then the technology. That basically gives us a good standing with the customer, because now we leverage the technology to achieve business outcomes. We do have all the system demos ready, available for your usage. If you are looking for anything on the environment management, which we discussed today, talking about consulting around sustainability, defining the programs for sustainability goals like waste minimization or energy consumption, or moving towards from one source of energy to another, tracking and monitoring, maybe implementing the other modules which we have shown in the overall portfolio. Definitely, we would love to help you out with that roadmap and with that consulting. With that, I will would like to give it back to the organizer, and would open for any particular questions if we see at this part of the time.
Before we move on to our Q&A, a poll question to our audience: which regulatory or environmental reporting requirements you report often? Please select your relevant answer and click on submit.
Can somebody from the team help us read the questions from the audience? And we can, myself, Christian, and Amar can take some of those questions.
We have a question here. So, how do you integrate the different online analyzers with the customized software?
So, Christian, would you like to take this question? I'm not sure if Christian, you're speaking on mute.
Oh, so sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Christian.
So when it comes to digital data and inputs, the application basically supports manual data entry, collecting data manually, but of course also it can be connected to automated data streams. So in the environmental space, everybody's talking about IoT these days, but we are doing this already since several years, connecting sensors out of any kind of environmental parameter, pH values, emissions in the air, so that can then be fed directly into the application. Good.
Yeah, I hope that has answered.
It's great to see there are tons of questions in the chat. Yogesh, while you were presenting, I was already busy, and it's great to see that there's so much interest and really good questions. So it feels like we have the right folks in the call.
All right. So one of the questions, again, I'm just going up, down from up. It says that, can we have notification alerts on the mobile? Absolutely, we can have notification alert on the mobile. The system can be directly integrated within your Outlook. So which means it can send you an email. It can also send you messages on your mobile to be on top of what is being expected out of yourself on a particular instance for data collection perspective, data confirmation perspective, and if any task is being assigned to you as part of this, as part of the process. I hope that answers the question. I will read one more question. How do you do the benchmarking across different sectors? So Christian, if you can take this question.
Sorry, I was looking at the question. What was the question?
So the question was that how do you do the benchmarking across different sectors?
So different sectors in terms of doing benchmark within a company, or would that refer to comparing the performance of one company with others within one sector? I'm not sure if I understand that.
So yeah, maybe because there was, this question was not put together in a great clarity. So what I will say is that we do get those again, I call it as the calculation factors for multiple emission values, which help us generate the data or get the corresponding data values across. But at the same time, if I see that different industries do have those different your defined permissible limits or permits. So we can always define those upper limit and higher limit for that corresponding value on a monthly basis to be in compliance, pretty much aligned with your permit. I'm not sure if this is what you were looking from a question perspective, but it can definitely help you always being within those limits, being in compliance, and within your organization, you can always have benchmarking. So as I said, site A versus site B. Which site is doing better with respect to energy consumption, natural gas, or non-renewable, or maybe the renewable energy consumption and waste discharges, etc. So those internal benchmarking can always be set, which actually helps us with that kind of a quick visibility and the right actionable on each of the site. Can we qualify online monitor? Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
There's one question. Yeah, there's one question which is in line with several which I have seen. This one says, can a system pull data from existing SAP systems which are in place to avoid manual entry? So this is, of course, as we are one SAP family, the main motivation when it comes to data collection, particularly these days, there's a lot of awareness around scope 3 emissions. So there we're leveraging other SAP information, but also not just for data inputs. Also, if we look at the process to manage the application here, we basically are able to connect to these single sources of truth within SAP. So here I'm thinking of any people which are involved, HR information, or information on equipment and functional locations, assets in the company. So we are not duplicating or re-entering these information. We just refer to that, and it's basically the same object on a technical view in the SAP system. So that's very crucial. It's basically using the same thing. And this goes then hand in hand with authorizations and process restrictions. So it's really crucial that companies just need to maintain that once, and then it can be leveraged on the EHS side.
Yeah. So maybe again, one more question, which is I am seeing that how this integrated control system is connected within the planned process. So I think this question relates more towards the integration, pretty much in continuation to what you mentioned, Christian, that being a part of the same family, that all your equipments, the machines, all your masters of the devices, which is being stored into your equipment master in plant maintenance, are being mapped into this system. So we can track this, or we can monitor those values directly from those, again, devices, can take those readings on a timely basis through the PI interfaces or through the web interfaces, where the data can be directly captured, and can help us generate the efficient reporting, again, on approved database calculations or the dashboards as needed. And the integration goes to plant maintenance, as I mentioned. It goes to your HR for the people for your workflows and controls. And we can also have the integration with your materials master, where we have all the hazardous material being stored for any standard operating procedures to be triggered there. But definitely with all your plant, closely integrated system with plant maintenance, again, other EHS modules, and the material master there. Again, I see these questions are definitely increasing. Not sure if we have maybe one last question if you would like to take, Christian. I'll pick up the one from, again, top of the line. Are there any standard parameters for benchmarking other than legal values and is part of this module? So you'd like to put your thoughts, Christian, on this last question?
The benchmarking somehow is here very big, but what we also do, and particularly to bring it into context of the outside company world in terms of benchmarking, is then to bring it together within our sustainability performance management application. So there we collaborate with ranking companies like Bloomberg or S&P Global to basically understand where the performance of the industry standard average is basically, and then the companies can also benchmark themselves towards that. So we see that more in this.
Sorry, Christian.
I'm good.
Yeah, so I know this question has been asked a couple of times. Although I know that this was the last question, but I thought not to miss this question. Can the system notify latest legislative changes or notification? Christian, if you would like to put maybe, again, 30 seconds feedback on our integration with RegScan, ESA, and some of those regulatory databases.
Yeah, I already answered that 3 times in the chat already to different people. It's good you pointed that out. So these regulatory changes and updates is a huge challenge, obviously. And this is a topic on its own, and there are experts out there. As Yogesh mentioned, we on the SAP side collaborating with RegScan and with ENHISA. Basically, out of the box, the application comes with a possible connection to RegScan. So we can connect to their platform. And then first of all, the applicability. So you need to decide what is relevant for me. And if that is connected and maintained, then the updates will be automatically pushed into the system, into the SAP system. Although I have to mention that this is an additional service from the content provider.
Perfect. Not taking time from the audience, I would like to maybe call back our organizers and help us maybe close this session. And all the other questions which have been unanswered, the team will reach out to you and answer your question. We'll take a dump of these questions, and with your email, in our next follow-up, we'll try to answer all these questions.
Before we close, there is a poll question that we would want to be answered from our audience. As next step, how would you like to get more details about your solutions and capabilities? Please select your answer from the options and click on submit. I'd like to thank our audience for joining us today and staying with us till the end of the session. And thank you to all the speakers who have joined with us today.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your wholehearted support. And we see a lot of audience, a lot of interesting questions. Appreciate your time. And you will receive the copy of this presentation and the answers to the questions which we haven't answered today as part of our follow-up on this webinar. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye. Thank you.